take your seats as we welcome Nick Godfrey, a senior director from one of our lead sponsors, Google Cloud, for a fireside chat with NCSC's CTO, Ollie Whitehouse.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see everyone here. Obviously, this is the session of future tech beyond the horizon, and I have the pleasure of being joined by Nick. And so we're going to dig in for the next 10 or so minutes into a number of topics. And so thank you for coming to speak to us.
Thank you.
So, this panel is focused on future tech. And in the context of emerging threats and enhanced resilience and readiness, what does that mean to you in your role?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the truisms of life is we always have emerging tech, and so I'll sort of focus, if you like, on what's emerging at the moment, which is obviously artificial intelligence. And I imagine a good number of the talks today have been on artificial intelligence or related to it. And there's many potential benefits to society from what we're seeing with artificial intelligence, from healthcare to productivity and so on and so forth. And I think, the way we sort of talk with our customers about how to think about AI is to think through the three security kind of ramifications or aspects of AI. The first being, obviously, AI could be used by attackers to improve their efficiencies and their performance and their ability to do things that would previously require manual steps. And so there is that potential challenge. I don't personally think that's something that is too concerning at this point in time. I think also that as an industry, we've demonstrated our ability to navigate new technologies and changes to business processes and so on and so forth. And so we'll need to adjust our threat profiles and adjust our controls accordingly as that threat emerges, but it's not something that I'm particularly worried about. The second use case, obviously, in that intersection of cyber and AI is, using AI to benefit the defenders. We're actually quite excited about the potential here. We think there's an opportunity to potentially reverse some of the defender's dilemma because AI could understand your organization, your data, your processes, your people, the very essence of what your company is, and therefore do a much better job of being able to defend it perhaps than the current approaches we have. And so we think there's some opportunity over the next few years to think of AI as a kind of net positive in terms of the defender's advantage. And we're certainly doing a lot to embed AI into our security products to improve the experience of the security analysts, reduce the toil, and so on and so forth. And then the third thing to think about with AI and security is the secure use of AI. We've developed a framework called the Secure AI Framework, or SAFE, and that's basically the steps that we feel organizations need to go through in order to be able to use generative AI within their organizations. And like a lot of new technologies, some of the controls and some of the security requirements are the same as we have today. And some of them aren't, and some things will need to be adjusted. And so there's quite a lot of focus on that particular aspect of AI within the companies. So that's AI, and then I think beyond AI, I think the other thing that's really interesting about this particular gathering is the startup ecosystem that we have, many of which are at this event, and the ability for that innovative group of companies to tackle these emerging challenges and to continue to provide us with new and thoughtful innovative solutions to the age-old problem of cyber. And so very encouraged to see that aspect of this particular event.
That's really great, and thank you. And you and I have been in this industry long enough, and we've seen a number of cycles repeat themselves, I think it's probably fair to say, with regards to new technology coming along, it being found inherently insecure at some later point after it's gained massive market adoption. So, how can we really ensure that those future technologies really do have security at their core rather than this kind of market-forced afterthought?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think a lot of the technology that we started using 30, 40 years ago is in some cases still in use, and even if the technology is not in use, still the principles and the architectures are still often found in current technology. And you know, that technology was designed for a totally different period of time and a different threat landscape, and it's just not capable of doing a good job of defending itself in the current threat environment. And security technologies can help with that to some extent, but ultimately you can't just bolt security onto technology. It's got to be done integral to the technology. And so we use the terminology, and others do as well, of secure by design, which for us means, you know, a few things. First, you know, having a user-centric approach. So how do you think about the user experience of the people using your technology, and how do you help them help themselves, and how do you help them make better risk decisions or avoid the need for them to make risk decisions, because it's often impossible for them to know what the right decision is. And so that whole user experience of being inherently more safe as a design principle is very important. We also think about developers. Developers are users too in some respects, and the environment in which software engineers work, their software development platforms and the tooling and everything they use will have a profound effect on the end product, the quality of the end product. And so improving that whole experience from a developer perspective is, you know, in our experience, is a good way to kind of drive down the overall number of errors and vulnerabilities that are natural consequences of humans writing software. And then finally, I think we have this concept of security invariance, which are, you know, principles that we establish for our systems, which must be held true in all situations, in all states of that technology, even when it's under attack. And we work very hard to both establish those, but also build software and systems such that they can be sort of independently verified as having those invariants and high levels of transparency, if you like, regarding the architectures and the software. So you know, secure by design has got to be the way forward, and it's the way out of, as you say, that sort of merry-go-round that we've created for ourselves.
Which has been a lovely career-building experience, but not what I want to now live again as the CTO of the National Cybersecurity Centre, if I can avoid it. So obviously we heard this morning the threat that certain state actors kind of pose to kind of critical national infrastructure. So in your view, how do we really ensure that, you know, critical infrastructure, the systems we most deeply care about, are really resilient to the threats both that we face today, but also understanding that we don't have a crystal ball and we can't accurately predict what the future may hold, and make them kind of future ready?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think we kind of have some view as to what's coming in the nearer term, AI and quantum, and although there's debate as to when quantum is actually going to become a problem. But, you know, clearly we don't understand everything that's coming at us by definition. And so we need to continue, as I said, to think about maintaining our threat readiness and understanding the threats as they emerge and evolve. But I think, moreover, similar to, you know, secure by design, we've got to think about investing in architectures and models for technology which are inherently easier to defend and more resilient. This is things like, you know, implementing zero trust-based approaches and architectures, through to deliberately designing your environments to have limited blast radius in the event of something going bad. And so that kind of inherently more defendable and resilient architecture is absolutely critical, we think. And I think how you get to that place is one of long-term partnership and agreed strategy and vision between the security teams and the technology teams. It really does require CISO, CIO, or CTO to kind of really be working together on a common approach, because it takes years to get to that place. It also, you know, requires the board of directors to have a good understanding of why that joined-up approach is necessary to support the right levels of investments, to recognize that security isn't just the CISO's job. It needs to be pervasive in the entire environment and the first principles of how you design technology.
And thank you for that. And for those that aren't aware, you know, Zero Trust has a genesis in Google, right? From Beyond Corp and the Aurora incident. And then we can track its timeline all the way through. And they've recently published a blog post on the long tail of implementing Zero Trust,
Yep.
which I think is a really fascinating and transparent, warts and all lived experience. Yep. You know, that it's not, as you say, you know, 6 months and we're done.
No.
If you've got anything of moderate complexity. Well, thank you, everyone. Hopefully, please let me welcome Nick, and thank you, Nick, for your contributions. Nick, and then, thank you very much. And now I'm going to be joined on stage by the panel, a collection of learned colleagues who are going to tell us the future from multiple perspectives. So please, colleagues, come on. Very good. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming along. So, as we've said, this is a panel around future tech beyond the horizon. So I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves in the first instance, and then we'll go back through with a set of opening remarks before going into Q&A. So, Dame Angela, if I could start with you, please.
Thank you, Ollie. My name is Angela McLean, and I'm the Government Chief Scientific Advisor, and I might be the only biologist here today.
Matt, please.
My name is Matthew Griffin. I'm CEO and founder of the 311 Institute. I cover 600 emerging technologies up to 50 years out and work with around 50 governments, the organizations that you have in your pockets, to try to understand what the future could look like and then how we mitigate that or how we benefit from it.
Good evening. My name is Akhilesh Warrior. I'm director at the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center in India. We basically work with critical sector entities across 7 sectors and work with them for their protection, offering them services and based on the compliances that flow from our legislative mandate. My perspectives and views here are informed by the visibility we have of their business processes, cybersecurity, and sort of interaction with citizenry. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Peter Knight. I'm the UK quantum technology champion, I guess, and I've been responsible for putting together the UK quantum program for the last 10 years, building the strategy about how we're going to exploit this for a further 10 years across a wide range of technologies, including sensing, imaging, computing, and communication.
Very good, thank you. So, Dame Angela, turning back to you, can you give a perspective in your role of what the future's looking like from a science and technology perspective, and give us a warm-up, please?
I can. Definitely bright. I think, above all, what I see is human-machine teaming. I think that's clearly where masses and masses of benefit lies. I did actually want to share some reflections after my day here. I treated myself to one day doing one thing instead of running from one thing to another, and I've had a really excellent day here listening to people talk about cybersecurity. And I wanted to pose 3 questions. I'm only going to answer one. So the first question is, Ollie, do you know why you're different from a see-through baby starfish? My second question is, do you know why babies are snotty? And the third question is, do you know why you feel so horrible when you're infected? And the reason I'm asking those questions is that I think your own personal security system, namely your highly evolved immune response, is quite an interesting model for what we're talking about here today. And in the interest of time, I'm only going to think about that third one. Why do you feel so awful when you're fighting an infection? And I think that's interesting because it makes us think about what cost have we evolved to invest in keeping ourselves safe from infections that would exploit our information processing systems. And the fact is that about 30% of your basal metabolic rate is invested in your immune response. That's when you're well. And of course, we all know that once you've got a proper infection, it's basically 100% because you're lying down asleep. And of course, that's one measure of the cost. And the other measure of the cost is that we all of us carry this beautifully evolved multi-layered system that if it goes wrong can kill you. And I don't think we need to build cybersecurity systems that are perfect models of the mammalian immune response, but I think it's worth asking ourselves, gosh, why have we evolved to invest so much in that protection?
That's a really good challenge, and also design systems that won't kill us, hopefully. Sir Peter, please, your opening remarks for the future.
One of the things that I can see developing out of quantum technology is a range of capabilities which are going to take a decade, and being prepared for those changes over a decade is really important for us. So building in ways in which we know that we're going to produce new insights, new capabilities that you can't get by existing technology. How would you deploy them? How would you build at this very early stage security by design, right from the outset, so that we have trust in the machines that we're building?
Thank you. Akhilesh, please, your opening views from a very unique position in India.
The only thing I would like to say is probably 4 keywords that come from lessons of our own from India is scale, diversity, amalgamation, and sort of learning from history. I think those are going to determine how we face our future threats.
Thank you. Very pithy and insightful. Matthew, please.
Thank you. So I suppose from my perspective, on the one hand, we need to remain very vigilant about our futures, because there is a lot that's actually going on. There are a lot of opportunities, but there are also a lot of threats. Secondly, if you think you're moving fast today, we've already passed the point in 2019 where we were able to disrupt with Mark Zuckerberg's Libra cryptocurrency, had it been able to be regulated and then pushed into the wider ecosystem, the point at which, according to the chairman of a variety of different central banks from the US to China to Europe and the UK, said that we could have transformed the global financial services system overnight. So when we have a look at the issue of speed, however fast you are moving today, it is not fast enough by any measure in the future. And then when it comes to technology, science fiction is dead. So typically I can show you the different technologies, whether it's liquid artificial intelligences, biological AIs, chemical computers, that we've already got in the labs around the world, as well as the holograms, the tractor beams, basically all these kinds of odd things as well, that simply mean that the world that you think you are living in from a technology perspective is not the world that you're actually living in, which then means that you need to be prepared for almost anything. Hence us being here.
Thank you. So, Dame Angela, turning back to you, you have a very unique perspective being the Chief Scientific Advisor for UK government. And in that role, you would have seen the power of data science and machine learning being applied to a whole range of problems in it. In your view, where do you think cybersecurity should be inspired in terms of both threat and opportunity and what the future might hold, and specifically drawing on your biological background? Where would the warnings be to this community as we kind of go on a learning path?
Well, we've talked a lot about diversity today, actually. So I'm going back now to my second question about why are babies snotty. One of the reasons babies are snotty is they don't inherit a fully functioning immune response. So, we have this whole all of us vertebrates have this large chunk of our immune response which we acquire through life. And that gives us temporal diversity in what our immune response should be. So throughout everything's immune responses, diversity is unbelievably important. You need to be different at different points in your lifespan. And ideally, you also want to be rather different from your neighbours, actually. You're much better off if your immune response is better than that of the people around you. And I think there are some I heard people today talking about patching, which sounds to me a little bit like, maintaining responses that change through time. I didn't really hear much at all in terms of it would be good if the cybersecurity that we built was itself very patchy, so that any attack would always have to confront the fact that any one thing that's responding is only going to be acting in a minority of the potential attack surfaces. So that's question one, why babies are snotty.
Very good, thank you. So Peter, turning to you, quantum computing is leading to various innovations, as we know. The example being photonics on chip for integrated circuits and others. From your again unique position, both nationally and internationally, what innovations are stemming from the global pursuit of quantum computing that this audience should be aware of, and why?
In quantum computing, we're at a place where we've got these noisy intermediate scale machines with very limited capability at the moment, other than some early work on optimization. But the big push is going to be to build quantum error correction, to build a fault-tolerant machine. And there, the innovation is really how do you handle the data blizzard that's necessary to fix the errors. So in particular, having an agility on chip to actually interrogate, fix errors in real time. It's going to be a blizzard of data. It's going to be the equivalent of all Netflix operating around the world at once on one machine. There are ways in which that can be done, and it's incredibly innovative. So that's the first one. The second one is that people are emerging with some real insights into the way that you actually protect your data within a quantum computer. There is those of you who are techie in the audience, to protect the errors and mend them is pretty tough. The overhead is really phenomenal, and there's been some real advances in what's called low-density parity check codes, which bring that overhead down enormously. So technical innovation has been extraordinarily rapid in this field. It's still going to be a distant prospect to build a large-scale, cryptographically significant machine, but I believe it's 10 years away, and that's time enough to do things.
Thank you, Peter. So, Akhilesh, I remember being on a trade mission to India with a former employee in 2013, and you had a science minister at the time stand up and kind of outline the sovereign objectives for India as a country. You know, it realized it could achieve many great things, and only in March we've now seen the first domestically designed and produced terabit per second switch router that's come out of India. And so, you know, I tell people that listen, which is not many, but some, that India is a critical partner to the UK and other countries in the future, because, you know, we can see a future where you become the technology producer for the globe. And so kind of given that challenge and on that, you know, how do you think about scale? Because you are going to have a scale that none of us have had to contend with in such a short space of time, both across all of the areas of S&T and then the kind of the cybersecurity Venn, please.
Thanks, Ollie. I think there's a lot going on in that question, so I'm going to try and unpack that in 4 parts. First, scale, right? So just for the house to sort of try and understand the scale. We are at about 1.3 billion biometric identities, which is UID, which has facilitated about 100 billion financial digital transactions only in 2023. Of the 8 billion mobile devices in the world, over 1 billion are in India. The average Indian citizen consumes about 18 GB of data in a month, which now is probably the cheapest data that you can find around the world. And I can go on talking about these population scale figures that we are dealing with. So everything that we do has to be aligned with the numbers that we are dealing with. That's number one. Now, second part is to address the sovereign part, right? So, you know, there are these 2 concepts. One is Atmanirbhar Bharat, or self-reliant India, which basically is the basis of our sort of industrial production now. But the other one is also Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world, one family. And so both of these concepts sort of draw from each other. So today, as in most countries, India is also you know, largely occupied by foreign vendors. And this is not only a national security perspective. You know, as a technological power, India wants to occupy the entire cybersecurity stack in products and services in the years to come. And that's how, you know, we are looking at technology in the years to come. And third part is sort of the, you know, being a critical service provider to the UK. Of course we are, but that's just not all. I mean, we see this as really a 2-way relationship where, you know, we understand and appreciate the formidable prowess and history that UK brings to science and technology generally, but cybersecurity specifically. So everything that happens beyond this 40 billion trade that we have is going to be a 2-way street. Which brings me to the last point is talent, and how do we bring this talent here? We have about 1.3 million engineers qualifying every year in India, 1/5 of which are computer science engineers. So what the world sees is only the tip of the iceberg in terms of the technology talent India has. So the way we see it, our challenge is not to come up only with a science and technology ecosystem, but to be able to achieve this pivot from science and technology to cybersecurity. I'm happy to talk more about it in the next.
That's really insightful, and I think, you know, those numbers are terrifying, but awe-inspiring in equal measure. I think it's probably fair to say to most of the audience. So, Matthew, turning to you, as the only futurist on the panel, brackets, probably best job in the world, close brackets. Can you explain what your methodology is, firstly? Because I think, show a bit of the science behind the vision, and then give us your top 5 technologies you see on the 15-year plus horizon that you think will have cybersecurity implications for both good and bad, please.
So in terms of methodologies, every year I'm identifying really about 50-ish new significant emerging technologies, where these are either individual general purpose technologies, so there are about 23 general purpose technologies that I have in my bench at the moment. Artificial intelligence as an umbrella term is one, synthetic biology is another, these kinds of things. As the world basically starts ratcheting up the amount of research and development that actually goes into science and technology, it's increasingly difficult to identify all of the signals. Now, when I started off, originally I would work at IBM, and if you really want to look at organizations that are developing really N+2 generation technologies, so not the next, but what comes after that, let alone N+3, N+4, and N+5 generation technologies, then some of the best places to start are the military. In addition to that, basically organized crime is brilliant. You provide an organized crime group basically with an interesting emerging technology, and they will spin it a million different ways and try to figure out a way to weaponize it. So when we have a look at quantum computers, one of the fears is that serious organized crime groups get hold of a quantum computer, and we say, well, that simply can't happen, really, because those quantum computers at the moment are highly specialist. They've got to be cooled, there's all these kinds of reasons. But over in China, as well as other places, I've seen the development of quantum computers that are nuclear magnetic resonance quantum computers. So they're only kind of a couple of qubits, but these have been built in people's garages. Now in Europe, we talk about federated supercompute and quantum computer policies. And so at some point, we might very well see a serious organized crime group aggregating different quantum NMRs with high error rates, albeit, together. So what I do is I literally scan the world basically for different emerging technologies, and we can look at research papers, and we can do all that kind of stuff. I sit down with the boards of the vast majority of companies. I work with hundreds of different universities around the world. About a month ago, I was with 166 of the UK's universities, so we sort of see what's going on everywhere. But fundamentally, I try to find what I call centers of gravity. Now, a center of gravity, if you have a look at emerging technology, you might think of, say, MIT, Caltech, Harvard as a center of gravity, a good place to look for new, interesting emerging technologies that are actually coming out. But when we actually have a look, for example, at India, basically we've got Delhi, and we've got a lot of different startup communities there. When we have a look at China, China is increasingly going dark, but they have the Chinese Academy of Sciences, which is a collection of 100 universities with $34 billion worth of annual funding. So what we try to do is we literally spread the net far and wide and deep. And we pick up these individual signals. We look for very small technologies that no one really cares about, all the way through to these game changers. And when we have a look at generative artificial intelligence, I was talking to Bloomberg 10 years ago about these technologies that would one day be able to write code, create content, and everything else. And even with companies like Accenture, I would call them creative machines because they didn't have a name. So from a forecasting perspective, when we have a look at the different emerging technologies over a kind of timeline that should we say, pique your interest, let's go. Now, we've already demonstrated that if you take a 4D printed material, not 3D, but you take a 4D printed material where the fourth dimension is time, and you are able to amend basically the design files for that material, then if you 4D print a blade, a turbine blade in a jet engine, and that jet engine hits 30,000 feet, the material changes shape depending on different stimuli. It could be temperature, pressure, oxygen levels, etc. So we've been able to demonstrate that if you manipulate a 4D printed material in a jet engine, you can literally have planes falling out of the sky. Another technology, when we have a look, about 3 to 4 years ago, a Canadian university went to the World Health Organization with a variety of different leaders and said, hey, look, for $1,000 using synthetic DNA, we managed to de-extinct the previously extinct horsepox virus. And the world leaders at the time said, kind of interesting. This was pre-pandemic, obviously. So what? So increasingly, for $100 in synthetic DNA, basically off eBay or from companies like Twist Bioscience, we are able to either create bioweapons that can destroy everybody on Earth, or we can selectively target you using CRISPR technologies. And using CRISPR technologies, I can target people with purely blue eyes. I can wrap a genetic weapon into something called an aerosol-based mRNA system. And using a gene drive, I can wipe out everyone with blue eyes over the course of a couple of generations, and you never really realize basically why people just vanished. When we have a look at artificial intelligence, because we should talk about artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence is an increasingly known quantity, but when we have a look at what's next, ChatGPT has a verbal IQ of 155. It has 1,000 times more general knowledge than any human today. It learns 300 million times faster than any of us. When we see artificial general intelligence, circa 2028 to 2030, we estimate it will have an IQ of 1,600 and 1 billion times more information than any mind. Now, this brings me to an interesting point, because increasingly we can actually use and access the information of 1,000 different experts within these large language models to create malware and ransomware. So the cost of attacking you, whoever you are, is increasingly dropping to zero. I need 0 skills, 0 money, and the likelihood that you're going to be able to catch me is also pretty much 0, because I can fake your attribution. When we have a look at artificial intelligence agents, so AI agents, this is where I simply give a single agent, which you can think of as like a smart bot, an instruction to wreck you. And the individual agent that I talk to goes off, has conversations with other AI agents. It decides who to bring to the party. It decides what malware to create, what systems to exploit, and off it goes. When we have a look at open-ended artificial intelligences from companies like Uber, of all companies, they are great at solving problems. So they create their own problems, and then in simulation, where they run hundreds of millions of simulations per minute, figure out how to do whatever they want to do. So if I say, my problem is hack the US Pentagon, they will go off and in simulation figure out how to do that, and then they will design what they need and go off and attack it.
Well, thank you, Matt. Sorry, unfortunately, I'm going to have to bring that dystopian view of
starting.
the future to a close to give us some optimism before we go to dinner. So, Dame Angela, turning back to you, I think we are seeing this convergence between digital technology and humans, be it human-machine interfaces to allow the disabled to achieve things that they may not otherwise, be it biological compute, this hybrid world, we see, a massive opportunity. When do you think, from your perspective, we can actually expect this? And then, how do you think about ensuring that we allow those innovations to happen, but cybersecurity is considered from the get-go, given the very personal impacts it might have, please?
Thanks, Ollie. I think we can expect to see this stuff now. That's the place where I would agree with Matthew. For example, just a few days ago, we've had the publication of AI synthetic biology confluence with the publication from Profluent, a UC Berkeley a company based in Berkeley in the USA, using AI to generate and then actually create a better CRISPR gene, so a better CRISPR protein. And that's both extremely exciting and also, of course, something that we do need to really consider. What are the implications? I think both the maximum excitement and the maximum worry lie, for me, there. So at the interface of AI and synthetic biology, engineering biology, if you like. I think the way to think about how do we regulate it is to look back at some of the most successful regulation of the past. And for that, for this audience, I would take us to human fertilization technologies. Truly shocking technologies at their time. And just recently, we in this country have gone through, I think, a textbook case of how to combine government, academia, a little bit of industry, there wasn't much industry involvement there, and fourthly, really importantly, the public, in order to create regulations that allow us to deliver technologies that we might some time ago have thought, gosh, surely we would never do that. I'm thinking specifically about what's called mitochondrial donation therapy. So that colloquially is known as three-parent babies. Rather small, not huge numbers of people affected, but devastating genetic diseases, completely overcome by this technology. So we have done it in the past, and I think I would go back to that point that it's not just that we often talk about government, industry, and academia, but I think that example shows us that there is a fourth player in the conversation, and that is the public.
That's really powerful. Thank you. And I take from that, there's an ethical dimension that it's not innovate at all costs, right? It's to innovate in an ethical manner. So Peter, turning to you, we've obviously discussed, people understand, I think, quantum computing and its potential kind of ramifications on cybersecurity. I think what's less well understood are, quantum sensing and quantum networking and what the future holds there. So if I can kind of tee you up with, what are the long-term opportunities or security implications for both quantum sensing and quantum networking to prepare people for the quantum internet when it finally arrives?
Right, let's take that apart into two, because it's kind of two. Quantum networking. What is emerging is the ability to get quantum machines to talk to each other in a quantum mechanical way, rather than using classical information transfer between them. We do acquire stuff from science fiction. That mechanism is called teleportation. Okay, so if we could get quantum machines to talk to each other in a quantum mechanical way, in a distributed way, it will actually do a whole raft of things which you would not be able to do otherwise. And it will affect quantum computing, because one of the problems that we have at the moment, as we scale the machines up, the cooling power is going to be disproportionate. I mean, the way I phrase it is you boil the fridge, okay? But if you had a modular structure by which processors could work together in a distributed way, it could be transformative. And that's certainly why Microsoft is investing recently quite substantial money in that sort of area. It has a number of implications, because almost certainly we'll be distributing the information via the cloud in some way. And so building in security, building in trust on this one is really important, and that's right. Now, if we look at the sensing side of it, the key parts of what we're able to do is use the ability of a quantum system to actually know something about its environment. And knowing something about environment gives you extraordinary capabilities in terms of situational awareness. You can see what's below your feet. You can see what's around corners. And using some really interesting modular structures, you can start doing functional brain imaging in a way that has not been possible before, where people are completely mobile, just runs like a cycle helmet. And that way you can start looking at functional brain imaging and looking at the way that decision-making happens in a way that you could not before. And at a time when we see that there's going to be an information overload and the machine-person interface is becoming more and more important, that ability to actually spot functional brain operation is going to be really important. When we glue all these things together in terms of situational awareness, we can also solve a major problem in terms of resilience. Because at the moment, we need to have resilience for position, navigation, and timing. we are hopelessly addicted to GPS. And GPS is jammable, spoofable, vulnerable, as we see from the Ukraine war. So building a resilient backup system through quantum sensors that enable us to navigate, to time, to actually run fintech is really important. That's what the quantum sensing program around the world is trying to do. On the quantum networking one, use the phrase that I've been trying to kill people about, which is the quantum internet. It's a crap phrase. It really is. People ask you what the browser is going to be. It is distributed information. It's quantum networking. Please, let's try not to use the quantum internet.
There we go. It's not often you're told off by a knight of the realm. But anyway, thank you, Peter. It's all taken in good spirit. And so, Akhilesh, turning to you, can you give a sense of the strategy that India is employing across government, industry, and academia as it looks to kind of think about securing future technology, to kind of give a sense of how you see that, please?
Yeah, I brought up a little bit of this in the last question, but again, talking about startups, we today have about 125,000 startups, 45% of them led by women. 110 of them have already made unicorn. And if you look at the children, school children, we have about 1,000 innovation labs engaging about 11 million school children. Why I bring up these numbers is also because there is a humility in government around the idea that the next big tectonic change or discovery is going to come from either one or a combination of these ecosystems. Government is going to be a facilitator, it's going to be a bridge. And now we are trying to figure out how do we do this. We think we can do this in 3 steps, right? First, I think it's our strength that we are problem aggregators. We have a visibility under the hood at grassroots. We have a visibility at strategic level. So we are able to put together problems from a bunch of different realms. And so if we are able to aggregate all these problems, put them together, and then engage ecosystems for who they are and how they are. Sort of a mutual discovery on the perspectives they come from, the interests they have, while being able to articulate what is it that we are trying to achieve. Trying to arrive at that organic mix. And third, after this sort of a strategic interaction or organic relationship, however we want to see it, we come to some sort of a roadmap on what are the problems we can address through some of these channels. Now, I can give you an example. So in India, over the last quarter, we've done something called the vulnerability. It's called a Pentathon 2024, basically a national level vulnerability assessment. So what we did is, it's a CTF competition for all practical purposes, but the challenges really resemble something very close to critical infrastructure. We put it out to everyone. Within 12 hours, we have about 8,000 people, students from around the country participating in those challenges. And here's the innovative part. So whoever we shortlist from that, the 150 students we shortlist from that on an annual basis, will actually be trained and mentored to undertake the vulnerability assessment at CII entities. So I can give you another example, the Smart India Hackathon, right? It's now become the biggest open source innovation model in the world, where they crowdsource all the problem statements and let it out to the student ecosystem. This time, about 50,000 students participated in that. So I have a larger point here. What I'm trying to say, it's not just that we have technical problems and we are getting solutions from the student. There's also the idea of amalgamation of that, where should the problems come from? How should the solution be an amalgamation of what the society thinks the solution should be, or how we as a community think the norms for our problems, or what problems we are trying to address. So these are ways in which we are trying to move the ecosystem forward, and we've been very sort of benefited a lot by interacting with UK, because the I-100 or the CIR programs are really the kind of interactions that we see in future with the industry going up ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very fascinating. So Matthew, turning to you and giving you about 5 minutes, if I can, please. Learn to chair. This is the course I send you on. No, not at all. But I think it's a really meaty opportunity. So turning to China and a futurist view, right? Yeah. So I think we heard this morning the context around this. Yeah. Where do you see the key divergences in science and technology developments happening from that region that may surprise us, that you think the audience should be aware of? Because I think we are seeing a bifurcation of technology in part, and you're probably closer to it than anyone in this room.
So, China. Now, about 6 months ago, I met the Vice Minister for the Ministry of Science and Technology in Hong Kong. He has a $1.4 trillion emerging technology budget, but that's for 5 years. And they're now got about another 3 years left of that. Compare that to the European Union and the US combined. Basically, the European Union and US combined have an emerging technology budget of around $900 billion. So, and that's over 10 years, by the way. And that's also on dedicated categories. Now, when we actually have a look at where China is today, in recent surveys, basically they are leading in 38 out of 44 critical emerging technology areas. They are leading in 111 out of 128 science and technology fields, where those fields can be a little bit broader. When you have a look at the Chinese Academy of Sciences, as I said before, it's an amalgamation of over 100 Chinese universities with a $34 billion budget. In addition to that, when you have a look at Tsinghua University, which is another emerging center of excellence, they are relatively unique in that they are one of the only universities in the world that I've actually seen that has gone to their 33,000 students and said, do something disruptive. Doesn't matter what, just do something disruptive, and we will give you $30,000 to do whatever. Now, when you actually have a look at the CCP is acting with urgency, which we do not really see in the US or Europe, especially Europe. By 2045, China wants to dominate and be the lead country for almost every single science and technology field. We are seeing a bifurcation in the technology standards. So, for example, we increasingly have Chinese 5G and we have Western 5G. Same with artificial intelligence, same with quantum computing, same with ultra-high voltage cabling systems, synthetic biology, and so on and so forth. Now, while China actually leads in roughly 80 to 90% of science and technology fields, and it's not just based on a peer review or a paper process, when we have a look at quantum computing, the one thing that I actually find interesting is that China leads in all of these different areas, but when it comes to their broadcasting, their quantum computing breakthroughs, they seem quite quiet. Now, bearing in mind quantum computing obviously provides an almost existential threat to encryption around the world, and that had CISA in a panic a little while ago for a variety of reasons. I find it quite strange that China is either not ahead of anyone else in quantum computing, but given the strategic significance of quantum computing, my gut feel is that they are just not sharing. Now, in addition to that, China has just spent $290 million on something called the artificial intelligence supermind. We do not have this in Europe. We do not have this in America. And I was speaking to the Pentagon the other day and said, you need this. The artificial intelligence supermind project is a large language model system that is quite literally designed to hoover up every single piece of publicly available research on the planet, with the idea being that researchers in China are able to say, we want to understand what the latest quantum computing or synthetic biology breakthroughs are, tell us. And then also show us who are the researchers involved in these projects, and then extrapolate out why should we care. Now, when we actually have a look at that, on the one hand, it allows China to, I would say cautiously, target, but identify people of interest, universities of interest, and research groups of interest around the world, which they can then go and engage. Now, from a pacing threat perspective, China is generally focused on N+2 and N+3 technologies. When we have a look at quantum computing, when we have a look at quantum generally, they have quantum radar, they have nil communication, so that's how you send data over xeno waves without sending data. They are way ahead of us in a lot of different technology fields. Now, when we have a look at the pacing threat, they are accelerating. They are trying to replicate some of the United States as well as Europe's key technology ecosystems. They lack some of the financing systems that we actually see over here. But the fact of the matter is that when you actually have a look at China, they're also going dark. So whereas in the West we publish our research and say, look, this is what we've been researching and this is what we've done and these are the experiments and things that we've got results for, the AI Supermind project actually has a geofence around it. If you are not in Shenzhen, you cannot access it. In addition to that, when we have a look at a lot of the Chinese research papers, they are not being published. So over the past 2 years, I have seen China going increasingly dark in terms of the information that they share. In the military space, we also see a crackdown in the bloggers. So if you take photos, basically, of military assets in China, you can now go to jail. So China is going dark, but they are incredibly fast-paced. They are acting with urgency because of the blacklistings systems and everything else. And at current rates, we will not catch up. We will not match them. I can guarantee you that.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, I'm now going to draw us home to an optimistic conclusion. So in the spirit of being future ready and to make sure that you actually enjoy your dinner, in a sentence, everyone, please, what is the one thing we should be preparing for today with respect to the future to give us the greatest chance of achieving cyber resilience in the future? If I start down the far end, Sir Peter, please.
Investing in people and skills to make sure that we have a STEM workforce that can really, really hit these problems and make a difference.
Thank you very much. Akhilesh.
Equitable access. We've tried really hard to get the last person a good quality internet until now, and we need to make sure that cybersecurity doesn't become a barrier or an additional burden.
Thank you. Matthew.
Go and explore lots of different things, act with urgency and speed.
And Day Manager, final.
Remember the scientific method, that reproducibility really matters, explaining your methods really matters, and that's what's got us this far up to now.
Well, hopefully you found that fascinating and expanding, and it will be the cause of many discussion over dinner. But please join me in thanking the panel and their contributions.
Before we break for the day to enjoy the networking drinks, we thank our networking sponsors, Accenture and Cloudflare. Please welcome Christian Riley of Cloudflare and Freya Arshad of Accenture.
Well, good afternoon. On behalf of Freya and myself, a very warm welcome to what is the final part of day one of Cyber UK, and I'm sure you'll agree what a fantastic day it's been. The themes of future tech, future threat, and future ready have certainly resonated with me throughout the sessions so far today, and it is our joint belief that the challenges that lie ahead for all of us are ones that certainly ought to be top of mind on all our strategic agendas. Now, I've had the pleasure of being in the business of technology for 30 years, both as the CTO of enterprise organizations and also on the vendor side. And if I look back on my career, I can't remember a single example of any major initiative that I or any of my teams that were part of have been successful without the impact of strong partnerships, just like the one between Cloudflare and Accenture. In a moment, Freya will provide some brief details on a recent announcement that we're both incredibly proud of. But I wanted to take a moment just to further underline the importance of partnerships as we, both in government and in industry, work together to address many of the current and emerging threats that you've heard about during the course of today. Now, in this morning's opening keynote, you may remember that Felicity talked about the challenge of skills and diversity. It is without question in my mind that we face a growing skill shortage within single entities and single organizations. In that same keynote, we heard Anne reinforce her very strong point and the view that she had about the importance of resilience and partnering. Now, if I put those two things together, whether it's partnering between government departments, partnering between industry entities, it is in fact a very healthy mix that can reap huge reward. So when we combine different skill sets and diverse thinking through strong partnerships and alliances, it enables us to be more adept and more agile in getting ahead of the evolution of the techniques that the state and non-state actors are using. Now, in turn, this helps us improve our proactivity and be more reactive to security postures that we're going to need to support the challenges that we're going to see in the coming weeks, months, and years. Freya.
Beginning September 2024, Accenture and Cloudflare will be delivering one of the key components of the active cyber defense capability, the Protective Domain Name System Service, PDNS. PDNS is a key tool to hamper the use of malware distribution and operations within the UK public sector. We're excited about this partnership, working with NCSC to bring innovation to the fore as the UK continues its journey for cyber resiliency. In the essence of this partnership spirit, Accenture and Cloudflare are delighted to be sponsoring the drinks tonight. So without further ado, please join us for a drink and stop by at their booth to hear more about the PDNS delivery that will commence in September. Thank you very much.
It is now time for our networking drinks reception. Please make your way to halls 3 and 4 to enjoy some great Cyber UK hospitality and to continue the conversation. Tomorrow, we start our programme at 9:15. We hope you have a wonderful evening.